Welcome to Keepers of the Culture. I'm Angela Pace, and this limited podcast series was created during a moment of national reflection, the 250th anniversary of the United States of America. As our nation marks this milestone, we pause to ask a deeper question: whose stories have shaped this country, and how are they being remembered? This series is being recorded in Ohio, a state shaped by many cultures, communities, and places whose contributions are essential to understanding both our past and our future. Keepers of the Culture exist as a mechanism for amplifying, honoring, and preserving those stories told by the people who lived them, protected them, and continue to carry them forward. Each episode centers on a place, a community, or a cultural legacy that has helped define Ohio and, in turn, the nation itself. Together, we reflect on where we've been, examine where we are, and imagine where we are going. This is not just history, this is living memory. This is stewardship. Thank you for joining us as Keepers of the Culture.
3 things you'll learn in today's podcast: how relics from the past shaped our guests, and how one will shape a future generation. How a single person's influence ripples across 3 different art forms, and why the art being made right now might be the only evidence future generations have of who we really were. Stay with us.
Hi, everyone. My name is Barbara Fant. I'm a poet, facilitator, teacher, educator, and I brought 2 artifacts today. The first one is Eyes of Gory Island, and it's by the great Said, who was a mentor of mine and just really a pioneer in this community for poets and theater and the literary arts. And had I never encountered him, I would have never gotten on stage. And so it's really important to me. One of the things that Said always talked to me about was the importance of going to Africa. He went to Gory Island every year throughout August and stayed there for the entire month and wrote plays and wrote poems. And so he always talked to me about the importance of going back to your roots and going back to Africa. And one of the times that he went back to Africa, he actually brought me my other artifact, which is a dashiki that he gave me. And it's really important to me. I almost wore it today, but I didn't. But it's really special to me. And, he ended up getting ill. The first year that he wasn't able to go back was the very first year that I was able to go back to Africa. And it completely changed and transformed my life. And so had I never met him, I would have never gotten on stage. He taught me about the importance of holding history, the importance of the spoken word, the importance of the written word. I wanted to bring these to talk about how special he was in my life. And he's the reason that I continued to become a poet in this community.
Hi, my name is April, and today I brought what I consider hopefully a future artifact. So this is a painting I did in 2018. The title of it is called "I Got Loyalty, I Got Royalty in My DNA." And I call it a future artifact because it is a painting that I did, but I will never sell this painting. And I have explicit instructions for my kids not to sell this painting, and I hope that it will stay in our family for generations to come. Actually, this is based off of my daughter. So she is the face or the figure in this painting. And then collage throughout the hair of this are a photograph, one of the photographs of the warrior woman of Dahomey. So this is a part of a heritage that I'm claiming, and I'm also giving to my children as a gift.
My name is Tress Augustine. I am a living historian, history interpreter, and cultural curator. My artifact is a photo of my great-grandmother, my mother's mother's mother, and her friends sitting at the Macon Restaurant, Bar, and Hotel on the historic Mount Vernon Avenue. This restaurant, if you were anybody in the Black community and you were traveling to Columbus, you came to the Macon. You ate there, you stayed there. The history of the Macon runs deep in the roots of Black Columbus. And this is my great-grandmother on her bon voyage night out. She is on her way to Japan. Her husband is going to war, and she's taking her family, her 3 small children and herself, crossed the sea for the first time. And so these are her friends and family there at the Macon to see her off. What's interesting about this photograph is that all of these people are related by blood or by community, and it shows the spectrum of love and color and race in the community. And so this is one of my most treasured artifacts because I had an opportunity to go to the Macon about 60 years after this photo was taken and have a cocktail in the same space and place. This is germane to my history as a curator and as a historian, because when I was a little girl, I grew up, I wanted to be these people. I wanted to have their adventures and tell their stories. And I'm so grateful and fortunate to have an opportunity to do so.
Hello, I'm Angela Pace, and welcome to another episode of Keepers of the Culture. And you know, culture is not just confined within a building. It's not just bricks and mortar. Culture is art. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about art as memory, art as a provider of culture, and art as a keeper of our culture and our memories. So I have with me today I have to tell you, I'm fangirling right now because I have with me today three incredible artists. First, Barbara Fant, who is spoken word queen in my book. Tressa Augustine, who I didn't recognize because every time I've seen her in the past, she's been somebody else. She is a historical interpreter. Is that the right term?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
And then the one and the only April Tsunami, whose visual works just basically blow me away and make me cry. And I told her when I saw her today, and I'm always glad to run into her, I am the very proud owner of 2 April Tsunamis. So there. Ladies, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having us.
So art as a culture keeper, what does that mean to you? Anybody, just jump right on in.
Well, I think, art has so many different purposes, right? Art has so many different functions. And I think for, especially like here in Columbus, we have such a great tradition of people, especially visual artists, who keep our stories alive in the community. I could rattle off a whole list of names of artists who do this work, but it is true. I mean, all art forms are vehicles for just telling our stories. And I think that's, to me, what it means for art being a vehicle for keeping memory and culture alive.
Tressa?
I just think that being able to document the stories of our community through spoken word art, through visual art, has been something that has been so beneficial for our community. It just means so much since we are an oral traditional community, just maintaining the stories, talking about the stories, sharing the stories. That's been the key. Like, that's what it is for me.
Barbara?
I, of course, think about the writers and the storytellers. I think about us coming from a tradition of the griot and the storyteller and preserving culture and history through that by telling the truths of the time. I think we were always taught, Nina Simone taught us, right? To tell the truth about what's going on, to speak about what's happening. And I think that we do that through the arts pretty well.
So you've mentioned a couple of names. Who were the memory keepers in your life growing up?
Oh my goodness. Well, I think, of course, my grandmothers were the memory keepers. My father is a memory keeper. In this community, I think about Issed. I wouldn't be who I am today without Issed. He was an incredible poet and playwright in this community and a mentor of mine. I would have never got on stage if it wasn't for him. So too many stories about that. So, but I think about him. I also think about Kojo Kamau. And I met Kojo through Issed. Issed took me to one of his exhibitions, and I think about even now we're finding photographs that Kojo had. There's a photograph that was circulating not that long ago, and if you look past the lens, you'll see Issed actually in the background. So somebody just showed me that on Juneteenth. And so I think about those folks, and I think about even the people sitting at this table. April Tsunami is one of those people as well. So,
well, since you threw it to April, Who were some of your memory keepers coming up?
Well, I think like personally, I have to think about, there's family members. I think I have an aunt, and she has always been kind of like the vessel for our stories, and we call her 411. If we ever need to know anything, we call her up. And then it's really interesting because as people get older, as elders transition, it's the mantle has been passed on to my sister. Hey, Steph. And she's become like this archivist of our family, and I don't even think she knew she was doing that. She became a scrapbooker, and like it documented all of these different moments in our family's life and our trajectory. And then going back to the community, I think about all of the incredible visual artists who have done that work and are doing that work. I think about Duart, who has just an incredible breadth of body and work that documents work here in this community. Of course, I'll be remiss not to mention Amina Robinson, who is key to that.
You don't even have to say her last name.
I know.
She's one of those one-name people, Amina.
Yeah, it's Amina. That's right. I would refer to her as Amina from here on out. But actually, I had the honor to be in her house for 3 months, and
you were one of the artists in
I
residence.
was, and just to just be in her house, it was just such a time capsule, and I actually learned so much about her. Her relationship to the community, just through being there and being able to just be in that space. So yeah.
Well, as a child of Columbus, I grew up here. I was born and raised here. So I have an intimate historic knowledge of all of these events. I remember going to Ace Arts. I remember, it said Charles Lyons was in the military with my grandfather. So there's never been a period of my life that I didn't know Issa and I didn't know poetry. He was the only person that I ever knew growing up who ever went to Africa. That was an amazing experience. And so being able to be in community and hear the stories of the Angela Paces, of the Fran Frasers, of the China Whites, being a child of Columbus, it has been my honor to listen, to simply be at the table to listen, and to be able to have paid enough attention that I can remember.
And I think that's the important part. You said paid attention. The fact that all three of you paid attention to those storytellers, those culture keepers in your lives, I think has made a difference and has made you the successful women that you are today. Okay, very, very important. Lots of times when we think of art, we think of it, as I said earlier, as brick and mortar. It's a museum, it's a library, it's a gallery. But our history has been told lots of times through various forms of art. So why do you think that art functions as an archival instrument?
Well, I mean, I feel because I have a background in art history, so I always think about art as artifacts. I think about them as being time capsules. Like to go back to Barb's reference to Nina Simone. Nina Simone always said it's the artist's duty to reflect the time. So if we were to go back, if archaeologists were to go and look at the art that is being made now, anything, it could be a still life, it would still speak to what is happening right now. It would still carry the spirit. There would be a hallmark of what is happening right now. So I do feel like art encapsulates what is happening right here, right now in this moment.
And to speak to your point, I always feel like art is the canary in the coal mine when it comes to culture. You can always feel, you can know, you can see what's going on in your culture. You can even predict some of the things that are coming down the line because your artists, like Kwojo Ababi always said, your artists are the vanguard of your revolution. And they are the front line for interpretation, for preservation, for to protect against erasure. And so for me, it just within that, from an anthropological standpoint, they study pottery, they study art, and that's what what we have available to us, and those are the kind of things that we want to preserve.
Artists are soldiers. I like
We
that.
are.
Front line, front
Absolutely.
line.
Absolutely.
We're soldiers. I also think about the intentionality. Like I think about Chisan, right? The West African Dance Company with Susan Bradford, right? And I think about the dances that are learned. I didn't grow up as a dancer, but I listen, right? I pay attention to the dancers in the djembe. It wasn't until I went to Africa that I realized those dances were intentional. Like this is the dance when, you know, we're celebrating the harvest of the crop. This is the dance when we're celebrating, you know, the royalty coming.
So they have
like
specific
they're specific
reasons
They're
and purposes.
Exactly.
Oh.
They're intentional. And so I think about that when we talk about the arts, you know, as preservation and the keepers of the culture.
So Tressa, this is for you specifically because you are 12,000 different people. As I said, I didn't recognize you because I've never seen you look like a real person. Yeah, like a real person
in my
before.
Tressa costume.
Yeah, your Tressa costume. I love that. So what histories come alive when you show our culture, when you express your art through all the different historic characters or history-based characters that you play? How does that relate to the audience? And how does the audience then come back to you?
I think that immersive historical interpretation and engagement is super important because you get to be in proximity to the person, especially if it's done right. I have been able to have some deep and meaningful conversations with a multitude of individuals across the spectrum just because my clothes are different, just because I present myself differently. We have to understand that, unfortunately, we live in a far different society than our ancestors would have ever imagined. We have a prior, we tend to like to think in our own time frame, but in order to really understand history and really open yourself up to it, you have to suspend your contemporary thinking. I tell people that all the time. And so when you meet me in character, I am not who you think I am. I am a person of the time. And then that opens up an individual to ask questions. How are we different? How are we alike? How do we get
So it
from
becomes
you?
a two-way then,
Correct,
right?
absolutely. It becomes a conversational engagement versus I'm dictating to you what was, what, how. You can ask me questions and I can give you honest engagement and honest answers about why the things are. The biggest question that we get is why. How do we get from there to here? How do we get from women's liberation and civil rights to some of the things that we see today? And history explains it, but you have to suspend your contemporary thinking about things. And I think that's the biggest attribute. People are able to think differently.
Okay, let me ask you this. Do children react to you differently than adults do?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Children are there. They believe.
I love that.
They understand and they can suspend. But then they also ask great questions that are not loaded by their implicit biases and the things that they think that they know. And that's the other thing.
I love that.
I love that.
It's a clean slate almost, right?
They get to start fresh. And the people that they hear about, I get to see you, I get to touch you, I get to smell you, I get to ask you ridiculous questions like, what do you eat? I'm a human, I eat food. But also, yes, I am wearing 3 layers of clothes. Yes, I am hot, but let's talk about why I'm cooler than you are because you're wearing shorts and the sun's on your skin and I'm covered up. So there's lots of conversations that we can talk about, and we can talk about cultural preservation in that way.
I love that. I love that. So, Barbara, poetry can preserve emotions and experiences that lots of times real life doesn't get recorded. So, what truths can poems hold and give us that traditional history doesn't?
I think it's more so the difference between like the facts that exist, and I think poetry speaks to the truth of the matter. I think poetry gets to the core. It can cut and pierce through. It can penetrate all kinds of facts and give you the truth of what it felt like to be there. So I'm thinking about even folks like The Last Poets, Sonia Sanchez, like, you know, these individuals that, Amiri Baraka, right? Like these folks that were writing during these important times in our history, and we can look at what they were writing about, we can listen to what they were writing about, and we can feel the emotion behind it. We can feel the power of the Black Panther Party. We can feel that instead of just you know, reading through the actual history. I'm also thinking about a poet named Yusuf Komunyakaa, and he wrote incredible writer, but he wrote a book called Dien Khai Dao, which is Vietnamese for crazy head, and it's all about the Vietnam War. I learned and understood about the Vietnam War by reading that book more so than I understood it through any history book. And I was able to feel what he was feeling.
So it touched you the way that a textbook writing would not.
Exactly.
Oh, that's interesting.
Exactly.
So, April, your work, which is phenomenal. Like I said, I'm president of 3 fan clubs here. But April, your work is just filled with symbolism and history. So, what kinds of stories are you emotionally trying to put out there through your art?
Yeah, you know, when I really honed in and really kind of like refined my practice, the work was really informed by my art history background. The fact that, you know, I studied all of these different movements throughout art. I studied the whole Western canon, and there weren't people that look like me portrayed. And I kind of took it upon myself, and it's kind of great because we're in a space now where we have the Kehinde Wileys, we have the Micheline Thomases, and so forth. But you know, not to age myself, but back in the day, that was not present. It was not there. They were not represented in museum collections or in galleries or even in the conversation about art. And so I wanted to put people who look like me front and center. I wanted us to be the main, you know, the main character, the main subject. So it was driven by that. I wanted to create new histories, essentially, by portraying beautiful, strong, resilient Black women as subjects. So that was my driver. And in doing that, it caused me to just do more research about pre-colonial African history, to uncover there's this wealth of like culture and history surrounding women on the continent that are leaders, that are warriors. There's also, you know, we've all been taught growing up in school and in college, we've all been taught about the Western pantheon, right? We've all been taught Greek mythology. So everybody has a mythology all around the world. There's a cosmology that's rich, and West Africa, all parts of Africa are no different. So, you know, I did some deep dives on Yoruba culture and mythologies, and so I mean that's the nucleus of my work, really.
Let's talk now about art as resistance, because sometimes certain histories have been rewritten or are being excluded. I'll just stop right there. Other times there are histories and communities that just aren't documented. So do you look at your work, at your art, as maybe a form of resistance, or making sure that those undocumented stories are told? Barbara, you mentioned The Last Poets, which, oh my God, that was that was my cultural awakening back in the day, and that was art as resistance right there. That was art as resistance. So do you, in your own art forms, are you exhibiting that resistance? Are you making sure that those stories that have been excluded are being erased even as we speak, or for whatever reason haven't been documented? How does your art speak to that?
I try to do it obnoxiously.
Oh,
I try to be as rude as possible about it. I try to be balls to the wall, as Black as possible, black, and black. Because I find that as difficult as this is, but for the general public, I have to humanize my experience. And that's crazy. That's a crazy thing. But as I work to being a Black patriot is difficult in the era 250. Okay, I've got deep family roots to the American, the building of this country. But there are so many stories that have never ever been told about what that looks like, about the labor, about the love, about the family, about the choices. And so when I interpret folks like Anna Julia Cooper, who was the first African American woman to receive her PhD, like that is something like most people don't even know. There are so many intricate stories, connective stories from our personal families, from the Appalachian borderlands, the places in between that nobody sees, and then the choices that weren't really choices at all that our ancestors had to make in order for us to just be present in a place that nobody wants us. It's so important that those stories be captured. So I do it without question, without abandon, without any cause.
So give me an example of who would fit in, which of the characters you portray would fit into
Well,
that.
I tell you what, I like to do composite characters. And a composite character is basically understanding the character's period of time and a person that was living. A prime example is a character that I do called Mary Taylor. And Mary Taylor is a generic name, but Mary Taylor personifies what a Black woman would have been in the 1800s. She was a northern woman, which gave her a certain set of responsibilities, but she was also a widow lady. And so when you were a widow lady, when you're a widow lady, you know, your gender becomes less of a encumbrance because you represent your husband. But also being a woman of color that is not super light skinned, who doesn't pass the paper bag test. You know, we've been fed a story that only a certain group of us got to
Colorism.
You know, a certain group of us got to be into the elite organizations or into the social aspect. But there's some of us who made our way up from the cotton fields and made our way north and did that story.
And didn't pass the
paper
bag.
We didn't pass the paper bag test. Some of our elders and ancestors had to do go the extra mile. So I just think it's so important that we recognize within ourselves and within the greater American history, we're not a monolith. Yeah. We come from all over the continent of Africa, and we were brought here and we made family. We didn't speak the same language, we didn't have the same beliefs, but we made family here. And those are the stories that oftentimes get left out. And so it's important to tell those.
So Barbara, how does your poetry speak to that? How do you try to unveil the invisibility or give voice to people who have been voiceless?
Yeah. Well, I think I kind of started off that way. I think I started off using poetry really like as this tool for prayer, and then this way of healing, right? And trying to actually heal my own trauma. And then I realized that there is it's a broader scope, that my trauma is often, you know, shared trauma with folks. And so later on throughout my life, it's been about, I think more recently, I've been really intentional about talking about joy. And using joy as this act of resistance. And I pulled that borrowed that from Toy Derricotte, a wonderful poet. But my last book is called Joy in the Belly of a Riot. Which is all about us finding joy in the midst of. And so I'm always, I think, speaking to the truth. I'm Black all day, every day. You know what I mean? And so I'm always, okay. And so I'm always speaking to the truth about, you know, Black and brown bodies of our culture, of this community. I also have spent a lot of time working inside prisons, using art as this tool for healing. So when we think about those who are voiceless, I think about folks who are incarcerated and behind bars. I think about folks who are survivors of domestic violence, survivors of human trafficking, and people who do look like us, but then also don't look like us, right? But we have this shared experience in humanity. And so I'm always using poetry as this vehicle to push against that and to help us heal and rise above that. I also am thinking about this piece I have, and I'm thinking about it because April's sitting across from me, but it's called Magic Before Magic, and it's an ode really to Ised's piece about magic people and about Black people always being magic people. That we were always magic people. We were always royal before we even maybe knew. Well, we knew. They just didn't know, right? And
And we don't know that part of our history,
We
or,
don't
or
always-
very few of us do.
exactly, and it's stolen and ripped from us, and now they're trying to take away, okay, we're not even gonna go there, but
I was in a good mood.
okay. But before we came here, we knew who we were.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I'm always trying to use my art to also speak back to who we were and who we knew that we were, and the remembering of that. And so I think we can use art as a tool and a vehicle to help us remember.
Absolutely.
So, April, Black women
Yes.
are the focus of your pieces. How does that work, and how does using Black women as the centerpiece, how does that speak to resistance for you?
I mean, I've one thing that I'm really adamant about. I just feel like that having us front and center, having us as the main subject, as the main character. I feel like that is in itself, it's a political statement. It's a political statement. That in itself is resistance. It is an exclamation of us surviving. It's an exclamation of us existing. It's an exclamation of us thriving. You know, Barb talked about prayers, right? You know, using the poetry as a prayer, but that's my prayer. That's my intention put out into the world, is that we continue to go beyond existence, but to thrive, to be present, to be the main character we want to be.
And sometimes your work, well, not sometimes, all the time, your work is kind of in your face. I mean, your images are, these women are so strong, and yet you can still see compassion. You can almost see the pain in it. And I just have to say, on a personal note, whenever I drive down Long Street past the Lincoln Theater,
Oh yes.
that image on the side of the canna bar makes me want to go, yes! And it is this beautiful mural of this woman. So I think when I think about resistance and visual art, that piece particularly speaks to me, because you have to see it. You have to look at it.
You know, it's really funny. Years ago, when I was like first starting off and I'm trying to get my art out into the world, and I remember being told by a gallerist that people do not like portraits where the woman figure is looking directly at you. I was told this, yes, and they don't. You know, nobody likes it. There's not a market for it, whatever that means. And so I guess I'm oppositional defiant. So I went home and was like, I'm gonna keep
Paint all women's faces.
yeah, and they're gonna stare directly at everybody. And so I do that intentionally, because I feel like that's another thing. It's another layer, is that I want the figures to be powerful. I want them to have agency. I do want them to stare back at you, and if they're not, they need to be in some action, some repose or reflection or prayer or whatever it is, but they are active figures. So it's my intention.
And all three of you, just the strength of your work, and especially when it does come to representation of women and our feelings and our strength and our courage, you all three do an excellent job. Even you, Tressa, all dressed up and whatever it is that you, I just can't get over the fact that you do such a great job of embodying the women that you're portraying, that it's hard for me to sit here next to you right
Well,
now.
I'll tell you what the secret is. It's the ancestors. I'm blessed with the curse.
Yeah.
Because they come to me. I ask them to, what is it that you need me to say? What do they need to hear?
Okay, I'm going to stop you right there, because that is a perfect segue into our next topic of discussion, and that is what we inherit and what you as artists have inherited that helps to make your work what it is. So what cultural inheritance do you feel responsible for having in you right now, and yet making sure that you push it forward?
No.
Well, you were starting to talk.
I guess it's just I always consider myself, I'm a transitional team for everything. I'm the oldest person in my family. There's a bunch of little kids and there's a bunch of old people above me. There's no real people in my age group. I feel like I'm the transitional team. And so what my hope is, what my deep hope is that I can be a place to temporarily archive this trait, temporarily archive these stories, and then pass them on. I'm only here for a time. And so my time here is to create a place and a space so the young folks don't have to go so far away from home to get this skill, to get these stories.
But where has that come from? What have you inherited specifically that makes it possible for you to do that?
I don't know. I don't know. I'm crazy. Multiple personalities.
I'm glad you said it.
I'm glad. I know everybody thinks I just don't know. I was the dress up girl. I was the theater kid. I was the kid who always wanted to be someone different. But I found that the richest stories, the most amazing stories, were the people that were in my life. My grandmother and her friends would talk about all the adventures they would have, how her mother took a big boat to Japan, like all of these wonderful, wonderful experiences and places. I just wanted to be a part of it. But as a little girl, I'm just laying on the bed listening. But
But you listened.
But I did because it fascinated me.
Yeah.
And I think that, unfortunately in this digital age, it's made us very connected to resources for research and preservation. But we've lost the listening skill, the just laying there and being like, what happened now? Really? And you don't always have to be in a rush to go do something or be. Sometimes it's just important to be present. And I think that's what it is. Thanks for talking me through that.
Okay.
You're good at
It's my job.
You're good at your job.
It's my job.
Just being present.
Okay, that's
Being
good.
present for those moments. And I just love it. I do it with my friends now. Some of my favorite people in the world, like Susan Colbert, Fran Fraser, Gigi.
Fran,
Like, I love being with
Gigi.
them just so I can listen. Gigi, what was it like? Because I know what I'm like. Can you imagine Gigi in her 40s doing the thing?
Well, I think I knew Gigi in her 40s. so-
Well, I can't and so I'm just honored. I'm just honored to be at the table to talk to you, to have known Barb for 20 years, to have known April for equal. Like, it's just an amazing opportunity, and I think that's what it is, just the intent of being present.
So, April, what have you inherited? What do you think you have come by, either naturally or, as Tressa put it so beautifully, just listening? What have you inherited that has made you the artist that you are today?
Yeah, I think we probably can all attest to this. We all come from, or I'll just say me personally, but I'm sure this isn't just a me experience. This is a universal experience, I think, for a lot of Black women, is that we come from a long line of creative people. We come from a long line of creative women who probably, didn't have the freedom or the opportunity to be like an artist. Like, I'm very blessed to be like just a full-time artist. And, my mother was creative. She expressed it through gardening. She expressed it in crafting and all of these other ways. But she wasn't afforded the opportunity to be not just an artist, but to be solely an artist and to focus on it as art solely. And and I'm sure that's my grandmother, my great grandmother. I would love to go back in time and figure out how people were operating, but it's there. It's there. It's in how people dress. It's in how people cook. It's expressed in so many different ways. And I think that I've inherited an artistic legacy from being a Black woman, period. Yeah. And also, I just also want to say, just in terms of being present, I love just that comment. And I think that's kind of what art does for us, is it slows us down. Because I've been in the throes of Instagram for hours, and in order to deprogram myself, I have to sit with art, be whatever it is, listen, just watch something.
Acknowledge art as the other person in the room.
That's
With me. That's the other thing. Art is the other person in the room, and our exchange is cultural. It's a relationship, and it's a relationship that matters. So I tend to it.
So what have you, Barbara, inherited from past generations, more immediate past generations? What have you inherited that makes your work what it is and what's important to the culture?
My initial response was the obligation to tell the truth. That's something that I've inherited. But one of the things I think about is the music. I inherited the music. My grandmother was a pianist. She was the pianist of our church for 30 plus years. All my aunties sang. I'm from Youngstown, Ohio, so I grew up in a, small Baptist church, and music was really my first language. So before I learned to write poetry, it was the music. And so I was playing. My father is a musician. So I was listening and I was mimicking. And I was hearing and I was playing it back. And then after my mother passed, that's when I developed this language with poetry because it was the only way I could get the emotion out. And so I inherited, I think, that that power to tell what I'm feeling either through the music or through the words. And I think about telling the truth, but I also think about creating platforms for other people.
Okay.
And I inherited that belief and that idea, and that you have to create a place and cultivate a space for other people to create and to get their emotions and their feelings out as well. And I would say Issei gave me that, but I would say so many folks gave me that. And all of you sitting at this table, I think, speak to that as well, creating a space for other people to do what they're called to do, to be in this world, and to sit and allow art to be the other voice in the room.
Now, you mentioned Issei
Yes.
many times, and that moves us to our next area of discussion. Is there one person, just one, Tressa, is there one person, my problem child, is there one person who has made you realize that you have a responsibility to be a keeper of the culture and has influenced your art in that way?
Yes.
And that person is?
It's definitely Issei.
And tell everybody, people who don't know about this
Sure.
amazing man, tell us who he was.
Yeah, Issei was a poet. He was a playwright. He was a cultivator of community. He was a keeper of the culture. And he had a band called Issei in the Advance Party, and they used to perform together. And he brought me on stage with him everywhere he went. But he was just also like this pioneer in the community, who celebrated and believed in the arts as a whole, but also in other people. And I think spoke to the truth and called out the truth in every individual. And so he's somebody who really just came into my life and said, hey, if you have a story, you got to tell it. And you need to get on stage. And I met him at an open mic. And I was 18 years old, and I had written poetry, and I had never gotten on stage. And he said, hey, my sister, you need to come to this open mic, and invited me to New Harvest Cafe the next day. I brought a poem, and I read on the open mic that evening, and I haven't left the stage since then.
The rest, as they say, is history.
That's right, yeah.
All right, Tressa, are you ready to settle on one of your imaginary little people, or no, real people?
Real people?
Real people. One real people.
Can it be a line of real people? No. So my grandmother
Okay,
was the
there
most
you go.
influential woman in my life. She was my superhero, right? She was everything. I thought that this woman could do no wrong. She did everything. She raised kids, she raised me, she did all the things. But I never knew her story. I never knew. I laid at this woman's feet. I knew everything about everybody else, but I didn't know much about her. And I didn't have the presence of mind when she was here to ask the questions that I know to ask now. So every day that I ask those questions, I'm kind of asking her, because I want to make sure that nobody misses their opportunity to ask the questions.
April?
Well, I'm gonna have to. I've been blessed to have a lot of mentors, but I know only one. I'm gonna say Betty Stoll.
Betty.
Betty was such a just such a mentor to me.
Yes.
I used to work for her way back in the day when I worked at King Arts Complex, my first job, right out of college. And I worked with her in the cultural arts department and put on exhibitions. And she was the person who really introduced me to the world of like Black artists, contemporary Black artists. So it kind of got me on that path that translates into my practice. So yeah, so I would have to I'd have to give it to her. She had this really beautiful quote that it's just been really resonating with me recently. But she said that Black art is Black life. And it's so simple, but it's also just in its simplicity is very profound. I mean, it's just like it encapsulates our lived experience. Our art is our experience. It is our life. So yeah, I take that with me. I really do. I take that with me everywhere I go. So
And we can all see Betty's work. She curated the Longstreet Cultural Wall, and you can see what she has done in telling the story, especially of that community, the King Lincoln Bronzeville district. So good choice. Good choice. I approve of that choice. Let's talk about the future and imagining new futures. What kind of a future are you trying to create through your work? And you've all touched on it a little bit, but if you had a crystal ball and you could see, oh wow, this is how this piece or this performance or this spoken word event, this is how it's impact the future.
I have to think about the concept of Sankofa. Go back and get it. Yep. Our future is so it's so informed by the past. It's so shaped by the past, so that we can imagine what new futures look like. I know in right after November, I kind of had this moment of just paralysis in the studio. Where it was just like, I don't know what to do right now. I'm feeling existential dread right now.
Right. Yeah.
How do I get through it? And so I ended up doing this whole series called Keep On Keeping On, and the whole series is like keep imagining, keep dreaming.
Yeah.
And the folk, like, it was just really interesting because I started to I started to incorporate more kids into my work, and so that was it. That's the future.
Yeah.
The future is passing this legacy, our shared artistic legacy on to our children. Because that's where our humanity resides. That's how we thrive. That's how we survive.
It said, used to have a quote that said, tough times don't last, but tough people do. And that, for me, is the impetus and the future of my work. I want to teach cultural preservation as a pathway to historic preservation and a primary line of resistance to erasure. I want to train community members, young people specifically, on how to document the stories, the oral histories and traditions. We have all this technology, but all we're doing is ordering stuff off the Temu and on the TikTok. We should be using these tools to really document before that opportunity is gone. We are at a very important crossroads in American history. 250 years of empire is a very, very long time, but we have a responsibility to our children and our children's children's children, as Kwojo used to say, to make sure that we do the work so that they can know the work that was done.
Yeah. I tend to use art as healing, and I brought that up a little bit earlier, but I had this prompt some time ago where I was having people write about what does a healed version of yourself look like? If you could write to a healed version of yourself, if you could see yourself as a healed version, what would that look like? And so I often use writing as this tool for us being healed and whole and being able to see ourselves as this healed version of ourselves. And I think that's my hope and my prayer for us all.
So you're all keepers of the culture. Is there something we, ordinary, untalented, or untalented in at your level, is there something that we can do as individuals to be keepers of our culture, keepers of the memories?
Document.
I was gonna say, yeah.
Document,
Write it
document,
down.
document. Write it down. If it didn't, if it wasn't written, it doesn't happen. And that's the unfortunate thing about being in a intersectionality with cultures. Western culture really, really prides its historic record on what's written, but that is not where we are naturally. We have oral history, we have written history, we have our history is in our work, but we need to start documenting now. We are losing sites, we are losing people, we are losing access in a lot of places and spaces to our own artifacts. And so it's super, super important that right now preservation and documentation is the key.
Absolutely. I also think about in terms of spaces. I think we have an imperative right now to really support institutions that are doing this work and organizations that are doing this work.
Yep.
We have the Poindexter Museum that is broken ground on that, and I just feel like that is, it's ground zero of where so many stories, so much of our history here in Columbus resides, and it's just important to make sure that we continue to support those places.
Yeah, I think it's write it down, take the picture, do the interviews.
Right.
If you feel it, do it. If you're gonna be in a space, take the picture, take the video, record it, get it out there, or keep it, so that you can pass it on. Support institutions. If you can donate, but also showing up, speaking to being present, being present in the space. If there's an event, if there's an interview, if there's a conversation, if there's an exhibit, go. Yeah. Be present in the space. I think that helps us preserve and keep the culture too, because even when we do write it down and they banning the books, or they burning up stuff, right? Yeah. That oral tradition still exists as well, and it's important.
I'm glad you mentioned oral tradition, and you brought it up beautifully, Tressa. Listen. I think what we can all do is listen to your grandmother. My grandmother helped raise me, and she came up from North Carolina during the Great Migration, and I wish now that I listened, but it was like, oh, okay, Nanny. I wish I had asked her more questions.
Right.
But at the time, I think we all think that they're going to be around forever, and they're the memory keepers. And what we have to do is accept that responsibility then to be memory keepers. Anything else, ladies, that you want to leave us with? Or have we just about talked out art and your important role as being culture keepers, memory keepers, and just incredibly talented people who are adding not just to this community, but also to the broader community?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for, thank you all for being here, and I'm glad to share space with you all this morning. So,
all right, same. I think this speaks to the power of maybe this community in particular, though. The fact that we have these long-standing relationships, the fact that we've just shown up. We've just been present in a space, and it's built this over time. We showed up and we kept showing up, and I'm grateful for that. So thank you for the time. Yeah.
Thank you for the time, but also, again, for your talents and everything that you are doing to make sure that we don't forget, and that the people who come after us, the generations that come after us, know, that they know. Keepers of the Culture, we're asking all of you to carry our stories forward. That's important. That way we won't be erased, we won't be written out, we won't be invisible, and we won't be voiceless. So institutions may preserve records, but it's our culture. It's our culture that survives because people choose to remember. And all of you, and you out there, are helping us all to remember. Thanks for being with us. As we bring this episode to a close, we are reminded that history is not only something we inherit, it is something we are responsible for. During this national moment of reflection, 250 years into the American story, we recognize that our collective future depends on how well we listen to, protect, and uplift the cultures and communities that have always been part of shaping this country. The stories shared here are not meant to end with this conversation. They are invitations to remember more fully, to engage more intentionally, and to invest in cultural preservation so that future generations will know where they come from and why it matters. Thank you for listening, thank you for learning, and thank you for helping carry these stories forward. I'm Angela Pace, and this is Keepers of the Culture.